Hey everybody, Kennis here. Hope you're doing great today. Today I'm doing kind of an interesting video. I don't think I've ever quite made one like this before. I'm talking about this bass guitar, and the reason why I am talking about this guitar is because two reasons really. There's a lot of memories and stories behind this guitar that I find interesting, as well as I'm going to be giving this guitar away to one of my friends today. And so I thought, you know, I need to kind of document this before I forget everything about this guitar. And really the only reason I think I've held on to this as long as I have is because of the memories. And so if I make a video, it's kind of taking care of two birds with one stone, if you will. So anyway, before I move into that, go ahead and like this video if you haven't already, or watch it a little bit and like it or thumbs down if you don't like it. Anyway, well, I'm gonna go ahead and say why I'm giving it away. So my friend Marty, who plays bass at our church, he saw this bass. I don't know if I had played it out or what, or if he saw it on my YouTube channel, I don't know. But he saw this bass and he was like, hey, that is like my dream bass. The color, it actually doesn't come across as well on the camera as it does in life. It's a little bit, to me, a little bit more blue on the camera, but it's a Lake Placid blue. So it's a little bit lighter than it comes across on screen. But he said, man, that is like the color that I've been wanting. And I wanted a jazz bass and an American Fender. And so he was like, hey, I can't afford to buy it from you, but I've got some firearms that I inherited, and maybe you'd want to do a trade or something. So I was like, well, maybe send me some pictures of what you got. Anyway, there wasn't anything in there that I was really interested in. And so I was like, sorry, man, I'm not really interested in doing a trade for it. But as I started thinking about it, I started thinking, you know what I'm going to do is build him a guitar. Like I was thinking about taking that red Squire back there and painting it Lake Placid blue. It's a PGA bass, but I thought, well, maybe that'll work. And then maybe rub off the Squire logo on the headstock and get a custom one made for him that's like, has his name on it or something like that. But the more and more I started thinking about it, I realized, like, this is the bass. Like I was going to end up spending some money turning that one into the bass that he would probably kind of like. By the time I painted it, by the time I put in new pickups, by the time that I upgraded tuners and bridge and all that kind of stuff, like I'm already going to be in at a couple $100. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to just go ahead and give him this bass. So let me kind of share with you the story behind this thing, because it's actually kind of interesting. This bass it's not that it just means a lot to me. It's just there's a lot of stories behind it. So I started playing this bass in 2001. Okay, that's almost 20 years ago, 19 years ago, and I started playing it. I was working at a store called Mars Music. Is that what it was called? Yeah, Mars Music. And I was at the time, I was the guy that would like check your receipt as you were walking out the door type thing. It was a really boring job. I liked working in a music store for like the first couple months, and then it really just became kind of boring. So what I would do is I would pick up a guitar off the shelf, and while I was just sitting there, that was my job, just to sit there and check receipts. I would just kind of play an instrument and just practice, basically. And I guess the managers were fine with that. They never said anything. So I was doing that, and I had picked up this bass a bunch. I remember there was a Rickenbacker that I used to play a lot for guitar, which is the only time I've ever played a Rickenbacker. And then for bass, I would always pick up this bass and play it. Anyway, in 2001, it was either 2001 or 2002, Mars Music went under. Right at the end there, when they were about to go under, of course, I didn't know any of this as just an employee, but the guitar manager, while I was playing this, so I was just kind of playing with this thing, he came up to me and he goes, hey, you want to buy that bass? And I said, sure. You don't want what I can pay for it, though. And just kind of joking around, and he said, try me. And I was like, well, okay, well, what are you talking? By the way, I think this was, at the time, it was $998 is what the list price is on this. And we used to have a deal at Mars Music where you could buy a guitar or buy anything in there for 6% over the wholesale price, what Mars paid for it. So, typically if a guitar might be $700 wholesale, you pay whatever 7 times 6 is, $742 is what you'd end up paying. And so it's kind of a decent discount. It usually ended up being about a quarter or a third off. So what I ended up doing is he came back to the computer and he said, all right, let's look it up. And he pulled it up and he said, all right, Mars paid $700 for this guitar and can sell it to you for $350. And I was like, what? I remember his name is Brett. I don't remember his last name. And I was like, are you serious, Brett? And he's like, yeah, I'll sell it to you for $350. So I was like, okay. And by the way, I was like just out of college, completely broke at the time. I did not even have $350 to buy this, but I was like, this is a once in a lifetime bass opportunity here. So I decided to, and by the way, I didn't even have a bass at this point. So I wasn't even like a bass player. I was just kind of a guitar player that knew the notes on the bass. And so I went and I had just opened up like the month before a Roth IRA, and I put in $800. I had like miraculously at the time at $800 to even put in there. And I was like, so I went in there and I took out $350 for it, bought it at Mars Music, was super happy, came with a hard shell case. I quit about a month after that. And then about 2 months later, Mars went under. And I think what the deal was, I'm not sure on this, but I think what the deal was is I think that Mars Corporate put the word out to all the managers, we need to get as much cash as we possibly can in order to stay afloat. So do whatever you can, make whatever deals you need to do, even if you're losing money in order to do it. Had I known that and I had any more money, I probably would have bought like a couple extra guitars. Would have been kind of nice. But actually, I probably should play some of this guitar because you can kind of hear this. It really does have a great sound to it. Man, that was some hacking. That was, I need to practice bass more than 1 hour a year, and I think I might improve just a little bit. So I was super happy to have this bass, and what was interesting is I was playing with a bass player at the time. I can't remember. John was his first name. I might be able to remember his last name, but I don't want to say it on screen. Anyway, I was playing with this bass player, John, and John was about my age. We were both out of college. He was a better player than I was. So when we toured with this guy that was an artist, a Christian artist, and when I say toured, it wasn't like amazing tour. It was like we probably toured 2 or 3 times for like weekend, 2 or 3 places in a weekend type thing. So, but to me, it was like the coolest thing in the world to be on a tour bus and all that kind of stuff. So John was really good at bass, and he had a 5-string jazz bass, American jazz bass. And so I was like super excited to tell him that I had bought this bass. And you know how it is when when you buy new gear, you want to share it with another musician that might understand what you're saying. Instead of everybody else in your life, it's like, okay, great. What's the big deal? We kind of suffered at that time. I don't know. I haven't talked to him in over 20 years or maybe over 17 years. But at the time, there's kind of like with young musicians, there's like a competitiveness, like who's the best one out of the group. I wasn't the best one out of the group. I was the weakest link out of the group. Out of our drummer and bass player and me on the guitar and our piano player, who was like the guy we were touring with, I was the weakest link. But anyway, so I was kind of really excited to tell John about this bass, but because there's that like insecurity as a young musician, it was interesting because I was like, hey John, I bought a Fender Jazz bass, not a Mexican. It's an American-made Fender Jazz bass. And immediately, without even saying, like, oh man, that's awesome, real cool, happy for you, anything like that, he goes, is it active? And I said, no. He goes, yeah, you got to get an active one. So I was like, oh, okay. And I kind of processed through it, and I realized, like, you know what, that is the kind of thing that makes. I actually, even at that time, I realized that's just an immature musician thing to say. Anyway, so that was my second story with this. And my third story is a story, and I probably need to do a whole video on this one about about how to borrow an instrument. There was this guy, Steve was his name. I have no idea what his last name. This is also in Nashville. He was playing in our church and he played bass, but he didn't have a bass. So I don't exactly know how that works. I don't know if he pawned it and never got it back or what, but so he was playing and he needed to play bass. So I was like, dude, okay, you can borrow my bass, but like please do me a favor and like take really good care of it. And I just bought it. Like it's an amazing instrument. I don't want anything to happen to it. And I said, you can borrow it, but as long as I need it, like I need it. If you're going to borrow it, I need it. I need it back whenever I need it. I had let him borrow it, and then I let him borrow it for like a month, and he played it a few times. There was a lady that called me up and said, hey, do you play bass? I'm like, I can like hack my way through bass. She was like, okay, that'll do. So she hired me to play this gig, and I was like needed my bass back, and I called this guy Steve like 20 times over like a 2-day period of time. I'm like, dude, Steve, I need my bass back. I need it back. Please give me my bass back. Like I have to have this bass for a gig. And he never called me back before I needed the bass. And I had to borrow another bass from somebody in order to play the gig. Actually, in order to go to the rehearsals for it. And I did get it back by the time we were actually playing. But I was like, so it's like, it's kind of a deal of, I kind of learned a lesson, like be careful who you loan an instrument to in that situation. So Kennis from the future here. I forgot to tell you in that story about loaning my bass to the dude. When I did in fact get it back, I don't know how well you can see this or not. It had this big gash right here in the neck. So thank you, Steve, for wherever you're at right now for this big, there it is right there. That big gash right there. That's the only imperfection in this bass. Those are my 3 stories that I kind of had that were they're not really that big of a deal, but to me they were, especially as like a young, somewhat professional musician. It was those were kind of like some things that really stuck out in my mind, and they revolved around this bass. And so when Marty was talking about it, let me kind of give you some close-ups of this guy. When Marty was wanting to trade for this, I was like, well, man, I don't know if I want to trade or not. Let me see if I can get that to focus on there. Man, these tuners are awesome, by the way. But isn't that a cool guitar? I mean, it's got the frills in the back, and I need to polish it up before I give it to him. I love that it's got the truss rod down here, even though it's harder to get to, and all of that. Anyway, I've got this thing set up pretty well, even though the strings are old, but I think it actually sounds pretty good. But anyway, so I thought I'd make this video. Sorry, I'm just kind of rambling on this, but I thought, you know what? I'm going to just go ahead and give this to Marty rather than me make trying to figure out a way to trade for something or whatever. And I started looking around my room, and I've been very blessed by having, instruments. And for whatever reason, I come across deals. That jazz bass right there, my thumb, is a 1971 body with the 1994 neck. Fender Jazz Bass that I got for $125. It potentially could be worth $1,500 to $2,000. So I've gotten deals like that. This guitar right here, somebody gave me straight up. That's like a $2,000 Taylor. And and then I looked at it. I've got that red bass. I've got the Fender Jazz. I've got that Olympic white bass back there as well. So I've got a lot of stuff. And I thought, you know what? All this is doing is just going to sit on all it's going to do is just sit somewhere. In fact, even recently when I've recorded bass, I've used the 71 Fender Jazz. So, this isn't even getting used. And I know that Marty would use it on a weekly basis. So anyway, Marty, if you're watching this, here's your bass, man. I'm excited to give it to you tonight. So you'll be watching this, I guess. Will you be watching this in the future? Yes, you would be watching this in the future post. So anyway, Kennis Russell out. Thanks for watching, guys. Marty, check out this bass later in the day. Appreciate you guys watching. I'll see you in another video.